I like to disappear into my hut when things get difficult.
It's been a while since we checked in with the world of Magalan and its standard issue bald video game protagonist Jax in 2017, and while the landscape has changed, a lot has stayed the same. I wish more had changed, to be honest, because the holdovers from the original Elex are most of what makes Elex 2 a disappointment. Underwhelming and sometimes confusing character writing undermines an interesting main quest scenario. Graphical glitches sabotage an often beautiful post-apocalyptic world, and straight-up terrible combat tears down everything else. Sorry about the inconsistent frame rate, but this is actually how Elex 2 ran on my 2060 Super, which is a step above the recommended specs from the developer. I'll get this out of the way right up front. I can't think of anything positive to say about the combat, and that makes it very hard to recommend Elex 2 in spite of anything else it might get right. It feels clunky, imprecise, and annoying. The hitboxes are ridiculous. Many enemies repeat these glacial, downright silly attack animations, where it's almost impossible to tell when it's actually dangerous to be standing near them. Jax, who has already saved the world once at this point, can still be killed in 2 hits by some random varmint along the side of the road. They do at least provide these helpful skull icons this time to let you know when you're fighting something that's currently out of your league, so I had fair warning that this little guy right here is a certified badass. Combat in Elex 2 is not bad because it's too challenging. Take that from somebody who's currently loving Elden Ring. It's just badly designed. The poorly balanced stamina system makes it difficult to smoothly transition between attack and defense, creating an almost turn-based feel. I attack, then I stand back and watch the bad guy swing at the air, then I get to run back in and attack again. Standing your ground usually gets you killed, since even basic enemies are flush with hit points, and it takes Jax dozens of levels to feel more robust than a wet sheet of paper. On top of that, there are too few effective options when you're getting ganged up on in melee. Shields are all but useless until much later on, with some of the early ones only allowing you to take 3 direct hits instead of 2. I often had to farm money for potions to get through tough encounters, which is a drag. One thing that's been improved from its predecessor's combat system is that you don't have a lot of encounters where you'll get 360 no-scoped by a firing squad off screen and be forced to kite melee troops around a cliff for ages to break their line of sight. So that's nice. The reason this is especially disappointing is that I've seen other similar studios who make these kind of hardcore Euro-style RPGs improve tremendously in recent years. The Witcher 2, as much nostalgia as people have for it, had a terrible combat system too, but CD Projekt Red fixed it up with grace and fluidity for Witcher 3. The Technomancer from Spiders also had abysmal combat, but its next game, Greedfall, was a huge step in the right direction that tightened up hitboxes and attack windows, fixed enemy tuning, and provided more interesting defensive options. We live in a world of post-Eurojank RPGs, and it seems like Elix's developer, Piranha Bytes, is the one studio that still hasn't moved on. Don't get me wrong, there are things worth preserving about that era of RPGs, but many of the ideas Elex 2 seems determined to hold on to are not among them. While it's by far the largest, combat is not the only problem here. A decent chunk of the dialogue ranges from fine to good, but certain characters often sound like they were written by aliens. They'll do and say things that don't make any sense, they'll spit out one-liners that made me cringe so hard my face hurts.
You can go. Go crawl up your own ass, you dipshit.
And there are mind-boggling failures of logic, like the fact that you can't get into the main Berserker settlement without running a few small errands, even if you're accompanied by Kaya, a high-ranking Berserker warlord and the mother of your child. If you ask her why she can't just vouch for you, she says something about avoiding rumors.
The last thing I need now is rumors.
A line of dialogue that's directly lifted from a completely different conversation. It's like the idea of bringing companions along was added later in development, and they didn't want to let you skip any busy work quests, so they had to jerry-rig an explanation. It gets worse than that. At one point, I raided an underground base full of enemy operatives who were working against the faction I was trying to join. I chose to kill them all, which you're allowed to do, and that was cool, but somehow, someone reported this as a crime, even though though it took place underground with no witnesses and the blessing, nay, the encouragement of the authorities. Hilariously, I had to pay a fine to the exact same guy who paid me a bounty for taking them out.
I must say, I'm impressed.
This kind of thing happens regularly. Magaland sure looks nice when there aren't weird glitches and distracting pop-in happening, which seem to get worse if I was alt-tabbing a lot on PC. It's roughly the same setting as the original Elex, but a lot has changed in interesting and dynamic ways. Elix's Berserker ending has been made canon, and as such, the Central Desert is now blooming with new life, thanks to the post-apocalyptic medieval druid larpers and their magic world seeds. Most of the Mad Max-esque Outlaws faction has been absorbed by the Berserkers, creating new styles of architecture and fashion that mix pelts and amber necklaces with scrap and old car tires. If you didn't play the original, some of these changes might be lost on you, but Elex 2 does a decent job of bringing you up to speed most of the time. I really liked all of this clever world building. It was interesting to find out what a lot of characters, like Chloe here, had gotten up to since I last saw them.
No, I'm the poster girl for happiness.
And the new factions, particularly the death-worshipping Morcons, have interesting ideals and aesthetics of their own. The new threat, the alien Skyans, also come sporting some very unique and downright cool designs for their soldiers and beasts of war, and a few unexpected secrets. I just wish I liked the gameplay enough that I could appreciate them without being constantly annoyed. The big shiny new toy you get to play with in Elex 2 is this upgradable jetpack. And I'll admit, taking it from the modest utility it was in the first Elex to something you can eventually soup up and use to fly around like Iron Man is fun and rewarding. It just doesn't make up for the fact that the other progression systems are yoked to an obnoxious combat system that becomes marginally more tolerable the more skill points you throw into it, but it never crosses the line into being fun. Exploring this world can be great, right up to the point where you have to fight anything or speak to anybody. Elex 2 seems geared toward a certain type of player who thinks 2006's Gothic 3 was a golden age of the RPG genre, and not much that has come along since is worth drawing any inspiration from, because in most cases this 40+ hour odyssey has not done that. Jetting around a visually impressive world in a neat upgradable jetpack was the most fun I had with it. I never looked forward to the slow and clunky combat or interacting with its too often bizarre or nonsensical script. I like a big, sprawling, crunchy RPG more than most, so I wish I could enjoy these more than I do. But unless they take some notes on where the genre has been headed in the last decade, I might give Elex 3 a pass. For some better RPGs, check out our reviews of Elden Ring and Lost Ark. And for everything else, stick with IGN.